60 Minutes Overtime.
The Nazis wanted to shut down the Voice of America during World War II. The communists in the Soviet Union and in China, the Ayatollahs and North Korea wanted to see the Voice of America silenced. It was done, finally, by people in our own government.
This week on 60 Minutes, we report on Voice of America, a U.S. government-funded broadcaster that was effectively shut down earlier this month through an executive order signed by President Trump. The mission for Voice of America, or VOA, is to broadcast reliable, objective news in countries where press freedom is in short supply. Before it was silenced, Voice of America was reaching some 360 million people every week in nearly 50 languages.
Hier spricht eine Stimme aus Amerika.
Voice of America first hit the airwaves 2 months after the U.S. entered World War II.
Unsere Stimmen kommen zu Ihnen
The
aus.
first broadcast was in German and beamed into Germany to use words as weapons of war against the Nazis.
The news may be good or bad. We shall tell you the truth.
The courier will relay the Voice of America to listeners in communist countries, despite frantic efforts by Russia to jam the broadcasts.
Soon, the Cold War provided a new opportunity to broadcast fact-based news to counter misinformation and propaganda.
Now I should like to direct a special word to those peoples now living under the tyranny of international communism. We want your friendship.
As the years went by, Voice of America's reach grew. In 1963, VOA transmitted live coverage of the March on Washington, broadcasting Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech to a global audience.
I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
The Voice of America was very much, we communicate the excitement of being an American.
Mark Pomar is a former director of Voice of America's Soviet Union division. He says the broadcast was effective, promoting an understanding of the United States, no matter if the news was good or bad.
The human rights movement, the dissident movement in the Soviet Union, beginning in late 60s, mid to late 60s, people have told me they learned a lot from the civil rights movement in the United States. Martin Luther King was on VOA, interviewed, and others were. And the reason why that was an important part of broadcasting was because it was an important subject in the countries themselves. The other thing that made a big impression is the way Voice of America covered the Watergate hearings. They were very impressed that a radio station would cover it no differently than any serious broadcasting entity would in the West.
The following program is in Persian.
Voice of America's straightforward reporting covered American challenges, both domestic and abroad.
For its part, the United States is trying to get the Washington view of the crisis to the Iranian people through the Voice of America.
Voice of America is funded by Congress and follows guidelines set by its charter, which requires its reporting to be accurate, objective, and comprehensive. A so-called firewall prohibits government officials from influencing the broadcaster's editorial decisions. This formula made VOA both a global information source and an American foreign policy tool. Every president since VOA's founding had supported its mission.
In 2 days, I will be going to the United Nations General Assembly to speak for a cause that people everywhere carry close to their hearts, the cause of peace.
VOA is probably the best bang for our buck that we have in terms of public diplomacy. We're the hard edge of soft power.
Steve Herman is the chief national correspondent for Voice of America. He told us the outlet has always been a target of foreign governments.
The authoritarians, the autocrats, have most vociferously demeaned the Voice of America and have tried to undermine it in any way that they can, either by jamming the radio signal, making it illegal to listen or watch the Voice of America, block access to our websites, put VOA reporters and freelance contributors into prison or target them for assassination. If it wasn't effective, would they be going to that extent?
In February, President Trump installed Kari Lake of Arizona, a former TV anchor who lost 2 statewide political races, as senior advisor at the Agency for Global Media, which oversees VOA and its sister services. Earlier this month, President Trump signed an executive order to reduce VOA's parent agency by the maximum extent allowed by law. With the White House calling VOA radical propaganda, Kari Lake then suspended VOA's journalists and cut off transmissions, silencing VOA for the first time in 83 years. 2 weeks later, a federal judge blocked the administration's attempt to dismantle VOA, for now. Steve Herman says without the sound of America's voice, the words, ideas, and messages from dictators will grow even louder.
There is a void out there now. It'll be filled by the voices of Moscow, the voices of Beijing, the voices of Pyongyang, and the voices of Tehran. It's an incalculable loss for us who work there and have this mission in our blood. But for hundreds of millions of people, it's an unimaginable loss.